Let's get to work, guys. A whole lot to talk about with Marantz, please let's throw your questions in here now. You know what, real quickly, Andy, is there anything you'd like to start before you can hand it off to Chris? I'll give you the floor a little bit, and then I think you're going to be a panelist as well, answering any questions you can from the Snap Ecom perspective. But I'll turn it over to Andy. There you go, bud.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Appreciate everyone joining. Great to have you always taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Obviously, we're really excited to have the Sound United family, or parts of the Sound United family, certain brands, part of the Snap One distribution network, whether that's e-commerce or at our local branches. It's great. That's all I'm going to say. These guys are great. They know what they're doing. I pale in comparison, and so I'm just going to turn it over to the pros. And if you do have any questions, certainly I'll chime in and I'll help out if there's anything that I can't answer. So take it away, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Number one, my name is Seth Snyder. I'm one of the brand activators for Sound United, and I'm joined by my partner, Chris Ellis, and Peter Medueno. Peter Medueno was nice enough to put together the presentation that he was going to give today before he lost his voice. So I'm going to be taking over. But when you look at the map of the brand activation team that we have, you're going to see a couple QR codes on the screen. So those QR codes we've been using for years, me and Pete, but now in the in the COVID world that we live in, people actually know how to use these things. So if you scan those QR codes next to your corresponding area of the country, that will dump the brand activator's business card directly into your phone. It's a little digital business card that we all have. My name is Seth Snyder. I'll be working with the MRI guys up in the Northeast. You also have Tim Lee up in the Chicagoland market, Peter Medueno that I mentioned earlier in the Colorado region. He's got the biggest territory. Jeff Davis is our beach bum out on the West Coast. Kendall Parrish is in Texas, and Chris Ellis, who's on this call as well, he is down in the Southeast, who, the MRI guys in the Northeast will all be very jealous of Chris's weather here in the next couple of months. We are the brand activation team. That I always make the joke that that's kind of Southern California speak for trainer. We're here to help you guys out in any need as far as, training for your teams on the different products that we offer through Sound United, through Snap One, and the distributors that they work with. As well as be, an extra level of technical support to make your lives easier out there in the field every single day doing what you do. So please feel free to blow up our phones. They're all of our personal phones. You have our email addresses in those business cards, and we're here to help you in any way. And today we're going to be going through Marantz. Marantz is a brand that I've been a lover of for years on a personal level. I've always enjoyed their products. I've had, amps from the 70s back, and that I would find, and kind of piece together. I remember I had a 2245 from 73 that I paid more for the cherry wood enclosure than I did the actual receiver. The really cool brand, and one of those aspirational brands that, people are known for passing down to their children when they're done using them. It's a great brand to work with. And it was started by a gentleman named Saul Marantz, from the New York neck of the woods. His story is so similar to other electronics manufacturers in the area. You had a guy who was really into, listening to music, wanted it to sound better, understood engineering, understood the electronics, and wasn't happy with the products that were available to him. So he started making his own out of his garage. So he started building things back in the 50s out of New York, and has become one of the big names in the audio and video industry. And over the years has had a tremendous amount of products. I'm a huge fan of that Project T1 from 95, the tube amplifier. That is, as you continue to evolve, not only are you getting, the Marantz sound that we know, that everyone knows and loves, but you're also getting the Marantz look. When you look across the room at a receiver wall these days, they all kind of look the same, but not the Marantz. You get that circular dial on the front. You get that Marantz look. It feels special because it is special. Now, under the Denon, the Sound United umbrella, there's a lot of discussion about the differences between Denon and Marantz, and a lot of the the functionality things that frankly that they share because they're all under one big umbrella. But when it comes to the actual audio quality between Denon and Marantz, they are wildly different, and it has to do with how we tune and the different parts that we use. So at each individual company, you're going to have a sound manager, so to speak. We call them sound masters. These are not just people that are, thrown into this job. You have to apprentice for this job. You have to train under the previous sound master for years before you're even considered to become a sound master for either Denon or Marantz. That is Yoshinori Ogata, excuse me, from Marantz, who is our sound master, and he is the man who's responsible for making every single piece of Marantz sound like a Marantz product to give it that sonic signature. And as you can see, he's a big fan of the champagne finish that we use. Marantz sound, when you're talking to a customer and you need to give them 3 bullet points, it's musical, it's emotional, and it has three-dimensional. It has a three-dimensional soundstage. This is what we try to make every single product sound like. Whenever you get a Marantz logo. If it has a Marantz logo on it, it needs to be musical. It needs to evoke emotion from whatever you're listening to, movies or music, and it needs to give the customers a sense of space and give them a three-dimensional presence to help them, escape the real world and enjoy the products that they buy from us. So the Marantz AVRs are what we're going to go through forward first. I'm going to go through each of the individual categories. We're going to spend the bulk of our majority on the bulk of what you guys sell, which is AVRs. We're going to go in depth on a lot of the features that Marantz AVRs have. There are essentially 4 models that we have. In this chart, we're going to make available to you, so don't sweat it. We'll get it to you eventually. But we hit a variety of different price points and a variety of different specs on there. So now, for the spec hounds that are out there, you're going to notice immediately that some of the wattage is going to match up pretty similar to Denon's. So the 6700 and the 8015 are going to have pretty similar spec outputs. But they cost drastically different, and it's because while they do share about 57% of the parts of a Denon and a Marantz receiver are going to be identical when you go spec for spec. Most of it's just video boards. It's pretty much all just the HDMI boards, the video processors, nothing to do with the actual sonics. What sets Marantz apart from Denon are the parts that we use that directly affect the actual sonics of the products. So we got 14% more parts, and I'll get into where that 14% comes from. And we use, frankly, more expensive parts because they sound better. We use toroidal transformers. They are 330% more expensive than the regular solid state transducer that is used in the Denon products. But they're wildly more efficient, and they give an overall better sound quality. Those toroidal transformers are the device that powers everything else inside the receiver, so they're extremely important. And we also use higher grade audiophile grade caps from ELNA. They're a little bit more expensive, but they have a higher capacity, and they're a lot smoother than the other caps that are out there. So we use them because they sound better. The 14% of more parts, a lot of that comes from our HDAM modules. We call it HDAM. It stands for Hyperdynamic Amplification Module. Essentially, all the other companies that are out there, they use just regular grade op amp boards. They're just op amplifier boards. They sound like they sound. You can't tune them. They are what they are. And luckily at Denon, we're very lucky to be, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So we get pick of the litter when it comes to those op amp boards. But if you're not as big as Denon, you don't necessarily get your first choice when it comes to op amp boards, and you're stuck with what you're stuck with. With Marantz, we take a little bit different approach. We take individual amplification boards. You can see all of them there in a line. And what it allows us to do is really tune that amp board after it's installed, which we can't do with an op amp board. So we're able to bring out different frequency ranges and really dial everything in. It comes with more parts and comes with more cost, but at the end of the day, it makes a sonic difference, so we do it. It gives us a better dynamic range, bigger disparity between soft and loud parts, those emotionally charged scenes in movies where something explodes and it moves the whole room. We're able to get bigger disparity between those soft and loud parts, way better detail, better imaging because we can place things better. I mean, there's just tons of advantage to these HDAM boards. It allows us to essentially get the sounds that we want to out of those boards. And we're also going to use current feedback. That is to reduce the distortion you feed when you feed a little bit of information back into the amplifier stage so that it can compare and eliminate that distortion. So where a lot of other companies are going to use voltage feedback, which isn't as effective at lower volumes, we're going to use current feedback, which is effective at all volumes. So there's a lot of advantages to those HDM boards. The toroidal transformer and the ELNAs are the other things that I mentioned earlier. These are big for us. The power supply in these is going to supply the correct amount of voltage throughout the entire line. It's much more efficient, about 89% more efficient than the other options. And the caps, we'll go super basic here. The capacitors, essentially little batteries. They store the energy that is produced by the toroidal transformer, and offload them back into the rest of the components. How fast they're able to offload those are going to affect how hard that kick drum hits or how hard that snare hits, and how smooth they're able to offload that charge is going to affect the overall fidelity of the actual recording. So we use custom ELNA caps in our products because, frankly, they sound better. So these parts that I mentioned are directly related to sonics. We mentioned earlier with 50% of the parts in a Denon and a Marantz receiver are the same. All the parts that I'm talking about now, they are not the same, and they all directly affect the sonics. So the reliability of those HDMI boards and the reliability of those handshakes and the reliability of that video processing that you've come to know and love from Denon, you're still going to get that from Marantz, but just a much different level of sound because we're using way different parts. We're also going to do things outside of the actual components inside the receiver. We're going to use a copper-plated chassis for better grounding and isolation, as well as just that overall higher part count from the HDM boards, which allows us to tune. So there's tons of reasons to spend a couple extra shekels on a Marantz receiver. You will get a difference on that money that your customer spends, and helps give you guys a little bit of a differentiation because Marantz receiver, even just in looks, it even looks cooler. So again, the receivers that we're going to be going through, there's 4 of them, and we're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to talk a lot about the difference between last year and this year, and a big thing is going to be, we're going to be talking about the big bad boy, the SR8015, because there's some definite advantages to using the SR8015. So new products, new features that are going to be in the new receivers that I'm going to go through. We're going to talk about the height virtualization. We're going to talk about audio distribution for between Hios products, because these are all Hios enabled. We're going to talk about the different HDMI tricks and games that you can play, as well as AirPlay disable and why that's important. In fact, I'll just hit that right now. If you want to use a different audio streaming platform, like you want them to use Hios or you want to get it into a Control 4 system build, you can disable AirPlay on the new product so that the customer isn't seeing that as an option whenever they pull up AirPlay on their Apple Music. These are also Roon tested devices for any of the Roon fans out there, of which I am definitely one. Roon is by far the best sounding and best way to organize a music library for streaming purposes. I absolutely love it. And it can be used with all of these products. And of course, because we're a Snap One partner, you got all those Control 4 drivers built right in. We're also going to use all of the available immersive audio formats, all of them. We don't want customers to have to choose. So we want to give the customer the best options available to them right now that allows them to really get all the advantages of all these great immersive audio formats, this 3-dimensional audio, so to speak. And I want to get into one in particular, which is DTSX, because DTSX Pro has some advantages. And this is going to be just the world of object-based decoding that we live in. Before, back in my childhood and my teenage years, you didn't have the ability to have this new object-based decoding, which really just has endless advantages. The way they got things to move throughout a space during a given movie was they just did essentially channel gain adjustments. The front right speaker would quiet down as the rear right speaker would ramp up, and it just used essential stereo imaging throughout the room in order to get things to move throughout a space. So if you've ever watched Apocalypse Now and you've listened to the helicopter at the beginning flying around your head, that's all they were doing, is just simple gain adjustments during that. With object-based decoding, it allows the sound engineers who make these movies a much higher degree of control because they can use the software at their studios to place objects where they want, and then they can load up those objects with the different information that'll tell them what location is coming from the room, size of the object that's moving in the room, whether it needs to diffuse from one channel to the next, and really give a better placement. What the processor does in the receiver is it will render that object, and then based on the input that you, the person who's installing and getting all this thing done for the customer, it'll take the information that you input as far as the different speakers that are available to them and creates that object using the speakers that are available to them in that system. So in a DTSX Pro, say, or Dolby Atmos monitor, as you see on your screen, they essentially have all those different objects that you see numbered to place on the screen to get the sound to essentially triangulate to come from wherever it needs to. So you aren't just doing gain adjustments, you're using multiple speakers to place things right where they need to be. So the more speakers that are in the system, the better overall placement that the receiver is going to have to place those different objects because it has more data to work with. So it's a really ingenious process of getting things to move throughout a space specifically. Now, for receive, so we support all of that. Now, for realistic situations where customers don't have 30 speakers in the room, or if they are maybe renting, or they don't have high spousal approval, and they don't have the ability to put speakers on the ceiling, we have a bunch of tricks for that. But based on the information that's there, you can change up the system and it'll still utilize that object. So if you don't have the ability to put the surrounds where they are, you can only do them in the back room. You can't do the middle room like you see on the left. If you get rid of those surrounds, it's still going to be able to triangulate those systems using the data that is encoded on the actual film that they're watching. DTSX Pro is one of the options that you're going to have to build up this system. DTSX Pro supports up to 30 channels. So our 8015 is going to come loaded up with 30 channels. I showed you those previous slides about using the different arrangements and still getting all that data because it's important for a customer who's guaranteed going to say, but I don't have 30 speakers, I only have 7. Well, or I only have 13. Well, DTSX only decodes 11.1, whereas DTSX Pro has 30.2. That's that much more information that you can feed your 7 channels. You can feed your 13 channels to give you an overall much more immersive experience with better placement of all those individual options that sound way better, even if you don't have the speakers there to build it up. Their configuration is a little bit different than Atmos. They essentially treat every speaker the same, all 30.2, whereas Atmos differentiates between the floor level speakers, the ear level speakers, and the ones that are above, but they all are used to create that three-dimensional space. The way we do it is pretty simple. If you have DTSX content and you have a DTSX Pro capable receiver like the SR8015, the DTSX content is coming into the receiver. It's going right to the decoder, and it's going to separate those channels and those channels and objects. The objects go into the renderer, the channels go into the renderer, and it spits out 30.2 individual pieces of information. If you have just regular DTS content, that it comes into the decoder and directly into the channels, and then the neural up mixer is going to send that through to the necessary speakers. So we're going to do all of the difficult process on the fly with every customer, just based on whatever comes into the receiver. Now, for those customers that have like old Apple TVs that doesn't have DTS content and it's coming through in like PCM, that's going directly into our neural up mixer. It's going to skip the decoder, but we're still going to utilize all those channels and utilize that mixer and renderer in order to use the speakers that the customers have. So if they have an older Apple TV and 11 channels, you're still going to get the advantages of that object-based decoding. It's just not going to be as pristine as if they had actual DTSX content coming through.
Chris, Seth, I wanted to comment on the neural mixer, man. I think that is one of my favorite things. I think one thing that can be often overlooked is kind of bringing new life into old content, right? So a couple of weeks ago, I was watching an old school a Western Desperado, man. And so for those of you who were on the DT call last week, I've got the A90 modules, and immediately it's putting in speakers that I have installed, and it's making those things active, right? So it kind of puts a smile on my face. One, I'm utilizing the speakers that I just paid some nice money and upgraded them to, working, utilizing the products that I have, and then also re-engaging the content that I know and love. So it brings life to the speakers that I just installed. And there's nothing more aggravating than installing new speakers and the content not actually using those. And so it's really one of my favorite small attributes about both Marantz and Denon.
Yeah, I'd say that's the thing. Like, not everyone's going to watch like the brand new movie. Like, eventually you're going to go back and watch your old favorite films. I know, like, I'll go back and watch, older films like The Godfather, and it'll sound great. And Pete will go back and watch, The Devil Wears Prada, because that's the kind of movies that he watches. And, we make sure that you're watching the content. Yeah, don't pop up, Pete.
Yeah, there he is.
I love it.
But I'm joking. Honestly, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. That movie is flawless. I love that chick flick. But anyways, we're trying to get customers back, and remember, it's the concept that matters. It's the music and it's the movies that customers love. That's why they buy this stuff, so they can experience it better. And we just do our best to give customers the ability to watch all that content with the latest tech. So the advantages, or some of the other advantages with that Neural X on, if you're running a 0.6 channel, if you're running that God channel, it's going to come through crystal clear. It also is great for any of those IMAX enhanced situations. If you're installing a big screen and you have that IMAX enhanced option on there, one of the things that's different about an IMAX theater than a regular theater, and if you haven't been to an IMAX theater, like, getting control of your life, they're absolutely amazing experiences. These screens are as big as a barn. And when you go to an IMAX theater, that screen is just so big that if they only used one center channel, like, they would, things would be coming from the audio would be coming from parts of the screen where the character is visually isn't. And it happened to them in King Kong. King Kong, like, reaches over top of a mountain, slams his hand at the bottom of the screen, stands up over the top of the mountain, and roars from the top of the screen. So they put center channels at the bottom and the top. So you get that ability when you're installing maybe big screens in customers' houses. You're going to have the option to sell more speakers and get the advantages of both those speakers using, with Neural X on the features with that IMAX enhanced capability. You're going to get those, those God channels in the ceiling, those secondary center channels that allow you to give an overall better experience to customers. The 8015 is going to support up to 13 channels with external amplification. That's big. Make sure you don't miss that. There's nothing worse than showing up on the install day and you don't have enough channels of amplification. 13 channels of processing with 13 channels of processing with 11 channels of amplification. So pop on an extra stereo amp, which we have, to run those extra 2 channels that you run on your heights. In order to get that full capabilities. But you're going to be able to run Dolby Atmos, you're going to be able to run Aura 3D, and you're going to be able to run DTSX Pro and IMAX Enhanced all off of the same receiver using those same 7.2.6 configurations. Now, I mentioned earlier, the great benefit of object-based decoding is that everybody can experience object-based decoding regardless of how many speakers they have. The more speakers they have, the better the experience will be, of course. But if they're renting, or if they don't have high spouse approval, or if they just don't want to, or they just frankly they're coming to the end of their budget and they don't have room to put those speakers up there, you have the benefits of Dolby Atmos and Dolby Surround mode. It would have it all virtualized. So essentially what it allows you to do is we're going to use some psychoacoustic effects that object-based decoding allows us to do, and virtualize those top channels. So for that customer in particular that maybe, getting up to the end of their budget, but you want to see them again, you can have them install a 7-channel system on the floor. And you know what? In the meantime, Mr. Customer, why don't we just run the wires for those Atmos toppers that you really want? We'll virtualize them right now. And in 6 months, when that bonus comes in, you give me a call and we'll pop those speakers up in the ceiling and we'll complete the system then. But the virtualization on the Marantz is a great way to, you know, keep that cash flow coming in as you go down the road. The other way to do that, and this is a tried and true practice that I've been using for years, is the benefits of a receiver that has pre-outs on it. Now we took it a step further. Pre-outs have been on receivers for years. But we actually have a new feature called preamplifier mode, where we will shut down the amplification modules in the rest of the receiver to really quiet the whole system down like a real processor does, so the customer can use an external amp. So they come in and they buy, you know, a 6015, a 7015, an 8015, and that preamplifier, they set it to preamplifier mode. It shuts down all those things and they can output to a bigger, badder amp. So they start off with that 6015 or 7015, and then down the road, they can upgrade to a secondary amp and it'll be like they got new damn speakers. That gives the ability to really be flexible with that. And when you get into some of the other features we have in the receiver, we can utilize that preamplifier mode in some pretty unique ways. One of the things that you're able to do is you're able to set different speaker settings. We use Odyssey room correction software in all of our receivers that allows you to set EQ curves. Right off the bat, I'm going to get into it. Make sure you download the app off of the App Store or Google Play Store for the Odyssey 32XT capabilities, for the ability to like adjust curves and set different channel curves. It really opens up the full capabilities of Odyssey. The like consumer friendly, you know, run of the mill freeware, we'll call it, is built right into all the receivers. They have the mic, they set up the mic, they can tune their system. But if you download that app for 20 bucks, it opens up a whole other world of customization that you can really get in there and dial in a system. You can now use that data for a situation that I've seen in the real world at Pete Madueño's house. Pete has he's got his view isn't quite as good as this apartment, but he's got the same type of setup where he's got a TV mounted to the wall, and he's got his surround sound system, and then he's got a drop down projector and a screen. And whenever, you know, it's just people over kind of hanging out, throwing a regular party, he's got the TV on, the projector screen isn't up. But when it's game time or when you want to watch a movie, the shades come down, the projector screen comes down, and you can watch a movie on the big screen utilizing the same AVR. Those are very different environments for the acoustics in the room. When those shades drop, it's a completely different reflection point for that right speaker off of those shades. So you're able to store essentially two different room correction settings in the receiver, one for regular TV viewing and one for projector viewing. The other thing that you can run into is if you get into situations like my situation where I watch a lot of movies by myself. My wife does not love the bang bang shoot 'em up movies that I watch. She's more into the rom-coms. So we'll watch movies together, and I'll have preset too for multiple seating viewings, wider sweet spot, better overall settings. And then I've got my settings for whenever I'm just watching my movies on my own. So I can have two different presets. And the big one, if you're up in the Northeast working with MRI, this definitely applies to you. I know I'm up in New Jersey, and I know we deal with slightly smaller spaces than our friends down in Texas do. So for any of those, particularly like the New York, Boston, DC market, where you're doing a lot of apartment jobs, this is a cool feature. You're able to set different settings and maybe run the entire house or entire apartment off of one receiver. You have your main area, which you want to use preamplifier mode on. You got a big multi-channel amp for a big badass system. And then you got a more modest viewing area, say in the bedroom. You can now set those different Odyssey presets for preset 1 and preset 2, one for the living room where you have it engaged with preamplifier mode, and one with the internal amps on the 8015 engaged to run the bedroom system. So you can run the entire house or entire apartment off with those two different viewing areas off of one simple receiver. Now, that's all well and good, but it's got to be easy to control. It's got to be easy to implement. So to make things as simple as possible, we have a couple different ways you can control it. You can do this all from the setup menu as you'd expect, and you also have a separate option menu that you can operate. This is a quick drop-down option menu that's very easy as well. But my favorite way to do that is you can use the quick select buttons that we store on the remote controls. This is also all these features that I'm showing you now. These are all available on dented receivers as well. But on Marantz receivers, you can use those little quick select buttons, the smart select buttons, and it will store that data. That is huge if you're doing this as part of a like a Control 4 build, because what it's going to allow you to do, instead of setting all of those commands into your Control 4 build, all you have to do is set that up on the receiver and then program that one command in for that quick button select button 1 or quick select button 2, and it'll change all of that for you on the fly. So you do all the hard work in the receiver where it's nice and simple and easy to use. Program that quick select input on the Control 4 build, and you're done. It makes your programmer's life so much easier. And you can control a lot of things with those pre-select buttons. You can, with some of the new things, you can set those dual speaker presets that we just talked about. That's all new. And you can select all zone stereo. So if you want to just, it's essentially party mode. You want those Heo speakers to start rocking, boom, click it and quick select button, and you're ready to go. But also some of the things that we've done for a while, those different channel level settings for different formats. You know, you can do picture adjust settings for different situations you're running into. Sound mode is big for me. There's a lot of people that, like, when they switch their Heos input, they want it to automatically play in all channel stereo. I am admittedly a purist. Stereo should be in 2 speakers, but customers want what they want. So sometimes that breaks my heart, but you give them that ability to set the sound mode to all channel stereo, get all the speakers rocking all the time. It is very easy for your program to program that in and make it extremely user-friendly for the end user. It's just a great solution that a lot of people just kind of assume are there for, like, you know, when someone goes on a business trip and someone gets a call that I can't get the TV to turn on, press the 1 button. Yeah, that's there for it. But think broader and think of in terms of the way your programmers can use that feature in order to make their programming life a little bit easier. One of the other things we do is we now have TV audio sharing, and we can do it either wired or wireless. So you will have the ability of setting different HDMI sources to your Heo speakers. So essentially what it does is it allows you to take whatever content you're watching, especially if you're, it's great during any sports season, where you can take what's on the screen and send the audio to a different zone. You can do that through zone 2. Essentially what it'll do is it'll take the multi-channel signal that it's getting, most likely Dolby 5.1, that it's getting from the cable box. It'll down mix it into a PCM signal in stereo, and then you'll have that option to send that to whatever zone you want, whether that be zone 2 or whether it be, one of the Heo speakers. You can do that wirelessly. So if you're watching the game and like me, watching my Phillies last night, couldn't get it done in the 9th inning. If I had to go to the fridge to grab another beer, I wouldn't have missed anything because I would be able to play that through my Heo speaker that's in my kitchen. Chris, you use this all the time to listen to, like, local radio and stuff too, don't you?
I do. So there's a couple of things here, right? So real quick, we've got, and I think it's a perfect time from a question from Seth. So Seth asked, which receivers have built-in DAAs for zone 2? And I believe the answer to that is all of them, correct?
All of them, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you confused me there. I was like, Seth has a question. I'm like, what? No, I don't. What are you talking about? So yeah, fantastic name, Seth. You got DDA conversion for zone 2 on all of them. So,
and
whatever
Seth,
source can come in.
I absolutely love the ability it's one of my favorite attributes when it comes to Heos, right? And so while we're talking about Marantz AVRs right now, we have covered a slew of products from Sound United, whether it's Denon AVRs, also our sound bars. But guys, you have now the ability to plug in any source, HDMI, fiber optic, analog, Bluetooth, and you can redistribute that audio signal to any other room in the house. So Pete loves to talk about his analog and his LPs and records, and he now have the ability to plug that into any AVR, to any sound bar, and redistribute that audio. So the ability for our TV audio sharing is not just within the AVR category, but the ability to share within the sound bars too.
Yeah, it's awesome. The other thing you can do too, for anyone who's worked on a retail floor in the past, 20 years, 30 years, you know that as you get older, and this is definitely going to happen to me, your hearing starts to go. I'm a self-admitted metalhead, and concerts have just done tremendous damage to my hearing over the years. So eventually I will be this customer going down the road. With simulcast Bluetooth headphone support, you have the ability to just connect anyone's Bluetooth headphones to these devices for whenever you want to watch late at night at full volume. You pair up the Bluetooth headphones, you pop them on, and it automatically connects up. Simulcast has the ability to use Bluetooth headphones and the speakers at the same time. So rather than have that big, long discussion and try to explain wire placement to somebody who's in their 70s about why they have to get the base station and the speakers, and then you have to unplug it whenever you watch, you can just use regular Bluetooth headphones for grandpa who's losing his hearing, and everyone else can listen. He can hear at max volume on those Bluetooth headphones while everyone else is listening at a comfortable level on the rest of the speakers. So if you have any older clientele, this is a great feature to know about for those people who are starting to lose their hearing as they get a little bit older, so they can still sit in the same room and enjoy movies with their friends and family, utilizing Marantz and Denon receivers. So, and one of my favorite features, I used to do this back in the day. When I say back in the day, it's probably like, it was probably like 10 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago, with like a goofy wire arrangement, an HDMI switcher, and another receiver that started with a Y that we won't talk about. And it was just such a pain to get this done. Essentially what this is bar mode. We have the ability to play different sources of audio overlaid over top of the different video sources. So if you've ever been to a sports bar, they'll have the game on and they'll be playing music while you're watching the game, because they're sending a different audio source into the speakers rather than keeping the video source on the game so you can keep up. You can now do this on receivers. You can assign whatever audio source from whatever input you want to overlay on top of that video source. So if you're throwing a party and the game's on just kind of in the background, you'll be able to do that. This also allows, if you're like me and you live in Philadelphia, it's kind of guaranteed that you don't like Joe Buck. That's just the way it works. And I'd much rather listen to Merrill Reese on my local 94.1 play-by-play during the Eagles game, rather than listen to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who no, sorry, Troy Aikman was a Cowboy. I can't listen to him. It's what's that? You going to jump in there?
Poor Joe Buck just takes a beating on these things, man. I feel sorry for that cat. Guys, I absolutely love this feature. So I'm going to give you my example from this weekend. So I went over to my bro's house. He's got, I'm a new uncle, so I did a little babysitting with him, because I got to do one thing that I haven't done in 10 years, and that is watch the Wolfpack beat a nationally ranked top 10 team. And so we were at his house. He's got a Denon AVR. We were watching the ACC network, which is an ESPN channel, but just like Seth and his Joe Buck, I'm not the biggest fan of the ESPN guys, but guys, I love my Wolfpack radio network. So I'm listening to these guys. These guys are excited. I'm excited. We're listening to one source and we're watching another source on the television. And that's a really small feature for a lot of people, but I think it's a really big feature for the sports fan. And I use it this weekend at my brother's house. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely. And get creative with this too, because, so many situations when I was selling to customers, the end user, they would talk about, like, oh, I don't want to do anything in this room. My kids just play video games in here. And it's like attached to the kitchen, or it's like, it's a room that like is always on. If a lot of these video games, and think about this for the gamers too. I mean, the same thing applies. While the kids playing video games, you'll have the ability to play your music over that. Like if your kids are ever into like that video game Minecraft, I mean, it's nothing but like cows mooing and clicks and beat. Like you don't need to hear anything that's going on in that game. So rather than having to listen to all that stuff, or the opposite end of the spectrum, listen to your kid playing Call of Duty and it sounds like you're in the middle of a war zone, you can play your music while your kid gets to play video games, and you can share that system. So that customer's like, oh, I don't want to really do anything in that game. It's just where my kids play video games. It's like, well, we've got this feature about sharing the same video source. So maybe, yeah, sure, maybe we don't do, a big giant TV because your kid's just going to be used to play video games, but maybe get a nice pair of speakers on there and run that off there. And it helps you sell more options. So the Marantz, the other option that we have is, video games are a pretty big market. I forget how many billions of dollars it is. But it's insane the amount of money that video games are generating these days. And it's not like it was, 15 years ago where, they only kids are playing these video games. Those kids who grew up with video games are now my age, and they're starting to make money, and they're starting to spend that money with you, and they're playing video games. So we want to make sure that we give the gamers a lot of different options as far as, the effectiveness of these receivers at playing video games, even on a quasi-competitive level. Chris, you understand this stuff way better than I do, because you understand video games way better than I do. Jump through some of these features for him and explain the benefits of these video game centers.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a couple of things, Seth. This we have this visualization of just like the middle school kid playing games, but that is just not the case anymore. I think one thing that you've seen with COVID is the entire pie with video games has grown dramatically, and it's about even. It's about 50-50 with men versus women. And the average gaming female age is like 38, and the average male age, I believe, is close to 40. And so it's a huge number. And these three features here, Seth, really have to do with that HDMI 2.1 spec. And I love them, especially when you start to see these new game systems as they finally become available. But I'm going to start off with the one on the bottom, which is my favorite, and that is ALLM, or auto low latency mode, guys. The only thing you need to know about this is game mode. Every TV that's been made over the last 5 years has some sort of game mode. It's just called something different from Sony to Samsung. So what this auto low latency mode does is it matches the frame rate with the television compared to the actually game system. My other one is the variable refresh rate. So one thing they're also noticing is there's a wide variety of native frame rates with televisions. The gaming consoles now are more powerful than the televisions. And so what it does basically is it matches up the frame rate with the TV compared to that of the gaming system. And then the last thing is what you talked about, and that is that kind of competitive gaming, that competitive gamer, which I am not. I do not do any online gaming, but what this does is for that online gamer, it decreases the amount of time between button press and what you see on screen. So that quick frame transport is going to minimize the time between what you click on your button and then the action that you see on screen. So as you see these gamers get more and more active and become more and more competitive, these AVRs are going to be right there to help them out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't have that feature when I played video games 10 years ago. So that's probably why I was getting my ass kicked by 9-year-olds in college.
Amen.
But yeah, so even for the gamer, which is a huge market that's not going anywhere and is only getting bigger, we've got their back as well. We're going to achieve all of this with our new essentially a 4-core, we used to have a 4 single core ADI Falcons in the 8012. We're going to upgrade that to the new Chark DSP, and it's what was in our flagship 8805. That's just to preserve the performance that's available. You're going to get that in the end, again, in that 8015 that can support up to 13.2 2 channels. It is a beast of a processor that helps. Essentially, you need a bigger brain to process all those channels, so we're going to make sure that it is available. We also have some essentially feature charts that are available for all of the receivers that we can send you guys if you need them. It breaks down what you get as you jump up through to all these individual pieces. One of the big things that I always point out is the 8015 is built at the Shirakawa in Japan. It is an absolute hammer. It's all of these features and all of these. It's a lot to take in on the screen right now, so don't feel like you need to really focus too much on find all the information you need. We can send you all this stuff, but as you can see, these things are just loaded up with features, as are the Denons. The Denons are going to have all these same video features as well, but it's not just a feature-rich piece, as we talked about with all of the MDAX. So the HDM modules capabilities that it has, it's also a great sonic piece. Some of the new features that are available today, and some of the step-up features to make it just a little bit simpler. This is all available to you, and we're going to send these out to you as well. Now, when space isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world, as it is in so many cases, when you need to pack a whole lot of features into a small space, we have a couple options for you in a Slimline. So the Slimline options are the NR1200. This is, I'll go back to my neck of the woods, New York City. There's not always a place to run those wires, and there honestly isn't always the capability to do a full surround sound. I made a pretty decent living in New York City selling stereo, higher end stereos, and this allows you to do that with the NR1200. It's a stereo AVR with HDMI switching. Now this is only 4K capable, and it's only going to support stereo, but it's a great problem solver for only $700. The 5010 and the 7011, you get in that 50 watts channel for each one of those, and that allows you to do 5 channels and 7 channels. The 1711 is going to have the full 8K at 60 hertz support with DTS Virtual X available, whereas you're only get DTS HD out of the 5010 because it's only running essentially 5 channels. You also have multi-room capabilities in the 1711 as well, so you'll have a zone 2 option if you're using 2 of those 7 channels for a secondary zone. Yeah, these are great problem solver SKUs. Essentially, the sound quality that you get from our bigger receivers in a much smaller chassis. Now, one of the things I saw earlier is the 30-second sales benefit between a 5015 and a 1711. Anytime you can get anytime you can get components farther apart, you get overall better sonics. There's less interference, need less magnetic shielding, and then overall, the 5015 is going to sound better, just frankly because it has a bigger chassis. Like, it's just going to be a better overall sounding product when you go from the 5015 to the 1711. And also, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, music, stereo. It looks cool. A cool stereo system is always a good visual look. You never have to worry about functionality. You plug it in and the stereo works every single time. I mean, stereo is just an easy, simple, elegant solution that allows customers to listen to music. And if you want to tie the video into it and make it a little bit of a hybrid system, you can do that too. We have a couple options for you. The PM 8006 basic stereo 2x70, $1,500. Real simple thing on all of these, actually, you get the knobs on the front. People love to, goose the bass a little bit, adjust your treble. People love those actual bass and treble adjustments on the front. They're always asking for them, so we give them to you. And then you have the 6007. We don't need quite as much power. Need a little bit of a slimmer space. It's only $800. Doesn't cost nearly as much, and it gets you a lower amount of power, but it still sounds really great in the PM 6007. And then my favorite, the PM 7000N. Now you can control all of this right through HEOS. So this has HEOS built right in. 2x60 watts, $1,200. You can run a good pair of bookshelf speakers on these, even a pair of towers that are pretty efficient. You can run on the PM 7000N, and you can control that all through HEOS. So if you're just running stereo, we have some great stereo options for you from Marantz as well to help maybe some of those secondary zones or places where just multiple speakers aren't capable, so you don't necessarily need the expense of an AVR. And then for when you're all bets are off, I want the best overall sound from Marantz I can get. We get into the AVR, the AV separates. Our AV 8805 is our flagship processor. It has 13 channels of processing, XLR outputs on everything. HEOS built in. It's got 3 separate zones, copper plated chassis. The thing sounds absolutely fantastic. And then when you don't need quite that many channels, or you don't want to hit that same price point, which was $5,500 for that particular processor, it just sounds fantastic. But if you don't want to hit those price points, you want to maybe do it a little bit more budget friendly, you have the 7706. You only get 11 channels of processing, but you still get those the 8K capable HDMI board. You still get the HEOS. You still get 3 zones. It's still a great processor as well. For power, pretty simple. 7-channel, the MM8077 is a 7-channel power amp, 150 watts at 8 ohms, and that is tested 20 to 20. And that also has a copper plated chassis for $2,500. If you don't need quite that many channels, you have an awesome power amp for 5 channels. The MM7055, 140 watts a channel, but it's 5 channels. $13.99. You don't get that copper plated chassis, so the 7-channel still sounds better. And we mentioned earlier, particularly with like the 8015, where it has 13 channels of processing, but you need an extra 2 channels of amplification because it only has 11 channels of amplification. The 7025 is your go-to. It has it's $1,000 and you get 2 channels at 140 watts a channel. That can be utilized with any of those situations where you need an extra 2 channels of amplification. Now, that being said, just as far as building out systems, it's pretty easy. 7, 5, and 2. A combination of those numbers will get you the number of channels that you need to build any of the surround sound formats that you're going to be building for your customers. So that is the full lineup with the Sound United brand Marantz. I hope that's informative. To make things even more in-depth for you, we also have a YouTube channel. Those of you who've watched Phil Jones is the dude who I call when I have technical questions. He's the man, and he puts out YouTube videos where he dives way deep. Each individual slide that I just did there is like 20 minutes with him, where if you want to dive deep on a specific subject, we have an actual YouTube channel where you can learn quite a bit from Phil and all the other Sound United guys that are out there whenever we release new products. So make sure you get on the YouTube channel. I'm going to feel like a YouTuber here. Like and subscribe, hit that subscribe button. And yeah, if you have any other questions, you can jump right in there. And that is it for me. Chris, how we doing?
Hey, we're doing good, Seth. Let me ask you this: is bar mode on the NR 1711?
That's a good question. We'll find out. Who's that from? Who asked that question?
That's from Seth. Seth will get back to you on that.
Seth will get back to you. Post your email address, Seth. I'll find that out for you.
And then I think you touched on this also, Seth. He mentioned about that 30-second sales pitch too, right? So from the SR 5015 to the NR 1711, I guess from my experience, I see a lot of folks who were in that Slimline series. A lot of those folks are new to the AVR category. Would you say that's right, Seth?
Yeah, a lot of them are just, frankly, they're like, I don't know where I'm going to put that giant box.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like they're using a TV stand that it's built to house those things, and there's definitely a spot for them. But it's just like, bigger things are a little bit more, they're a little bit intimidating. If it's bigger, it must have more features, and it's not really the case. I mean, you can kind of do all of the same things with the 7011 you can get into with the 5015, but it is one of those conversations to have with them that like that EMI and RFI between components, that's real. That's not just like a cable pitch. It is a thing. And I've experienced when you go from like lower power, things sound better because they're just not talking to each other quite as much. The 5015 with all that extra space in there, that's more places for all those components to breathe. That's less interference before components. On paper, they look similar, but the 5015 is just an objectively better piece.
Nice. We got one more question from Gary. Are the preamp and amplified outputs separate to eventually produce 30 discrete channels?
No, we don't. There are other brands out there that'll give you 32 and 64 channels, but they are not discrete. At that point, we'll talk to you the next couple years on that front.
Yeah, we also got a couple questions on Odyssey, and so guys, when Odyssey updates their software, then we update ours, or we update the Odyssey. So that is a partnership with Odyssey there. And is there a window?
I think I saw something in there about using different room correction software, and no, Odyssey's doing a great job for us. We believe in that and what they do. And one of the big things that I always tell people, if you're not quite sure on Odyssey, or if you haven't had experience before, make sure you download that app. It's a completely different level of control. I know it's $20. Pull the Band-Aid off and get it done, and you'll have that app for all your other installs as you go through. The level of control that you get on that thing, like all cards on the table. I came from the Bowers and Wilkins world. I was recently acquired. I kind of came from the building, and Odyssey was always big. Any type of room correction software. We've got our propeller hats in there and did everything with our own mics and did all of that all on our own. I don't miss that world, man. Odyssey makes everything so much simpler, and the level of precision that you get out of an Odyssey tuned system, if you're using that app, is just exceptional.
Very good. So we got a question. What are the products that are shown on the screen right now? Seth, that's the is that the model reference 30?
That's the model. That's the model 30. That is, if you like the way it looks, stay tuned, because we also like the way it looks. But that is some of the reference products that we also have available from Marantz that the guys at MRI and Volutone can talk to you about availability on those products. But yeah, those are our reference products. We didn't touch on them today. We had kind of things like big moves.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there was a follow-up question to that as well, about it being available at Snap One. So you started touching on there. I just wanted to make sure that the question was completely answered for Mike. So right now, the fulsome Marantz line is available at our locals. So the MRI, Volutone, CPD, AllNet, with a certain selection available on e-commerce on the website. Hopefully in the near future, but we're working towards sometime in the future that we'll have the fulsome line on e-commerce as well. But if you definitely need any of the Marantz products that you don't see online, check out your local branch and they'll be able to help out.
Yeah, right. I've gotten questions on turntables on that front too. So yeah, reach out to your local branch. And to answer your question, the Model 30 is an integrated analog stereo amplifier, and there's also a streamer CD player processor combo that goes along with it. It sounds so smooth and it looks so cool. And don't get confused either. Like, it looks like nice and petite in that screen. It's a big box. It's a hammer, man. It sounds really good. And I drive some of our more we'll call them power hungry speakers in the Sound United portfolio with relative ease with this thing, and it just doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but it's a decent chunk of electronics, man. It's really cool.
Hey guys, so Kyle, good question. Is there a Windows or Mac OS version of the Odyssey multi EQ software? And there is. Just go to your respective app stores for that. And then are Marantz amplifiers compatible with 4 ohm speakers, Seth?
Yeah, they'll drop down into 4 ohms.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not getting too crazy, yeah, they'll drop down to 4 ohms.
Very good. And then I think Pete is answering the last question live there.
Yeah, John McDonald, thank you very much for clarifying some of the pricing in there. I think you guys might have seen that question if you guys were monitoring that at all.
Oh, it's September, isn't it?
Yeah. John's out here with us here in LA, but also John had hit me on the side about discussing the Sound United educational process, that there is not only the archive videos that you have, Seth, but there is also an additional dealer portal, if you will. Can you talk to that about that, just in case these guys want to go deeper?
Yeah, Chris can, because I haven't done my e-learnings yet.
Yeah, we've got it's basically what we call Sound United University, and so guys, we've got just a plethora of content on there, and I think Gary, from some of our learnings, when we first started doing these trainings, you're like, Chris, we got to go more in depth, right? And so we've got a lot of great more in-depth decks, right? So we're getting some really good questions on the NR series on here. And one thing I really want to give a shout out to you guys, it's just the absolute sheer volume of questions. I mean, we are at 33 answer right now. And I believe in the first session last week, we're over 40. Yeah. Guys, I think that for us, that means we're doing something right. At least we're opening up the books to the things that are, the top of your mind. So, you guys have, one thing that you will have is you will have that nationwide screen of all of our QR codes. So if we didn't get a question answered today, just take a quick picture of that and reach out to one of us, wherever you guys are located. Guys, that's what we're here for. You see us online today, but our goal is to be face-to-face with you. I'll be down in South Florida the week after next. So we are really excited about this partnership. And, Gary, I think this is like 7 weeks of this. We started with e-com and then internals, and now we're wrapping up with you guys. So hey, I'm gonna miss you guys.
I know we know the names. We know the names of our children's middle names at this point, all of us. No, hey, really quickly on diving deeper. You know what? I want to point out Lloyd Snyder. He hit me yesterday with a question. Longtime Marantz dealer and Denon as well. But he had questions and wanted to kind of I saw you answer a question about ohmage, and he had questions. Sorry for the paraphrasing here, but it was 4 ohms versus 8 ohms of an available switch to do so. Is there anything you guys can bring up or that you had questions on regarding where we are now with the current ohm selections, and maybe some of the legacy product that you guys had? And I'm sorry, Lloyd, you could by far type a question in there if I didn't really get it completely right. But is there anything you guys might kind of encompass for Lloyd on the ohmage discussion?
Hey, Seth, do you have any more details on the ohm issue?
I was looking, you caught me. I was looking up Seth's 1711 question. Hit me again. Sorry.
Lloyd, he hit me yesterday with a question that he had been doing, denim product for quite some time, and there was some question to what current ohmage that you guys had and switching back and forth between 4 and 8 with particular speaker setups that he had. And I'm sorry for the paraphrase there. By all means, type a question in there, but it did come up yesterday in my office, and I said I would bring it up. And I see Lloyd is on this discussion now. Anything that you guys are getting hit with especially legacy dealers with the older product with the current ohm settings now?
No, I mean, that's one of the things you run into. There's so many individual speaker companies out there that are, finicky in their own unique ways. And as you learn, as you go through some of those speakers that are a little bit more comfortable in the 4 ohm range, you'll have the ability within the AVRs and within the processors to set your impedance output. I think it's under the, if you hit menu and then you go to audio, or maybe under speakers, there's a setting in there where you have the ability to set what the impedance of your speakers are. But as far as changes of that over the years, right now they're stable down to 4. 2 gets a little tricky, as you'd expect. That's a big old load, and the speakers that are operating at 2 ohms and are comfortable at 2 ohms are usually getting up there in price. So, like, what are we doing at that point? But no, you'll have the ability to get to a wide range of impedance hungry speakers. One of the nice things about Marantz receivers and Marantz products in general that I didn't touch on earlier is you always have that stated power that's on a Marantz receiver where it says, it's 1,000 watts per channel. And then you look into it and it's like, yeah, but that's at like 16 ohms and, under completely unrealistic situations. So what we do a little bit differently is we're going to rate everything in stereo. We think that's effective because there's no movie you're going to watch where all speakers are playing all at the same time, all at the same volume. That's just not how movies are made. But stereo, you need to know what they're going to put out in pure stereo. So we'll give you a stereo at 8 ohms, and I think we publish 4 ohms on our website as well. And then we're going to give you full frequency range, so 20 to 20. So you get a realistic expectation of what these amplifiers are going to do. And we guarantee at any point 70% of that overall rating. Because as power fluctuates, and we're able to do that because we use things like toroidal transformers, we're able to guarantee that 70% of that power rating on all of our products, which you just don't see in a lot of receivers that are out there. And quite frankly, I mean, you look at some of the receivers that are out there, they say they're rated for those same ratings that we put out at, a 100-watt receiver. And then all of a sudden you test it and you're down in the 20s. And we just don't. That's across all channels. We're going to guarantee 70% of that stereo rating across all channels. So it's rest assured that you're going to get what you get out of this. Just make sure we're not putting crazy power hungry monsters that need 300 watts on something that's putting out 140. That point,
can't power it with a potato.
Can't power it with a potato. Yes.
Thanks for the detail, buddy. And Lloyd is reiterating here. I think he found some of the answers in the manual last night. So good stuff there. Yeah. Hey, Andy, anything to, we did a lot of work as well to try to get, listen, hundreds of dealers have joined us over the last few weeks, getting them registered, identifying them and helping them out. And you were institutional on getting, that connection for our partners kind of established. If there's anybody on the fence on that or having any issues, please let us know. But Andy, thank you so much for the setup. We only have one more Marantz training to do. We're going to come back here in 4 more hours. Anything to kind of put a cherry on top of this training today for the Marantz portion and all the work you did from Sounds United, the e-com and clarifying all that. Thank you so much. Give it to you for a sec, Andy.
All I can say is thanks. Thanks to the Sound United team. They've been great partners to work with, and thanks to all of you, all of our partners and integrators out there for continuing to support us. That's all I can say. That's all I got.
Thanks, buddy.
Happy to be here.
Do we see that one from Kyle here real quick about looking for that app? Peter might have answered that already. Peter, anything else on the back end on answering these questions you'd like to cover? Hate to throw it to him if he's got the laryngitis.
Nope.
Okay.
So I think Kyle is looking for if it's available on the computer, not on the app. I believe it is only on the app. It is only an app. It's not on the computer. It's not available on the computer, Kyle. But other than that,
That's from Chris's question. Sorry, we must have misunderstood what you said there, Kyle. Yeah, this is an app-based software.
All right. 10:07, guys. Thank you so much. I did record this entire session. Look for it in your inbox on Friday morning, as well as the slide deck. Everything that you're going to need to continue this conversation and pass it to your team and kind of educate within your own little stratosphere there. But we're here for you. And I think for the next portions that we'll see us in Q4 is maybe some live appearances. We're going to continue to bring this party to you as product continues to trickle in. Thank you so much for your efforts, Andy. I think this the whole campaign is going great, and man, do the dealers have some choices now? This is excellent. So great session, guys. Seth, hey, fantastic job. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, man.
We do need to congratulate Seth, and I can answer Seth's question. I was talking about the other Seth. I was talking about Seth who's asking questions because I just found his answer. Yes, the 1711 has the ability to assign inputs, so you can do all that fun bar mode with the 1711.
Well, you know, there's nothing wrong with a little self-gratitude there. And Seth, you're just such a pleasure to work with. All right, guys, that should do it. Look for your inboxes on Friday morning from all of us at the Snap One local stores. They're thriving. You see, we're busy everywhere from coast to coast. That's MRI, Custom Plus, AllNet, and of course, Volutone. Andy, thank you. Chris, as always, Seth, buddy, and Pete. Hey, let's do this in 4 more hours. If you guys missed it or had to bail out, or your team is kind of maybe going to get back to it, hit me back up. If you haven't registered, and we'll be back into this at 2 p.m. West Coast, and that's 5 p.m. with a tailgate session a little bit later, and that'll be our last training. So I expect a little bit of a loose atmosphere, if you will. Bring your questions. Let's talk more Sound United in a few more hours, guys. Thank you guys so much. We know it's busy. Stay safe out there. Each and every Wednesday, we'll see you here. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Gary. Sandy.